Without any further ado, bring you today's speaker, prayer chaplain Alison Balter.
Good morning, everyone. So when my name appeared on the program, guess what the first thing was that happened? People came up to me and said, "Are you a minister?" No. "Are you studying to be a minister?" No. "Then why are you on the program?" Well, as Reverend James just said, I've had a path in my life, as all of you have had in yours, and that path has taken me to fulfillment through unity. And I'm going to share my story, which in many ways may relate to your story, in some ways it won't, but it's my story of how my life has been changed through this path and how wonderful it is as a result of this path. I was born Jewish, and I put it in quotes because there was no religion in my house, although I was born Jewish, and no religion in my house until when I was 11 years old. And when I was 11 years old, I begged my parents that I could become a bat mitzvah. So off to Hebrew school I went, and at 13 years old, I became a bat mitzvah. Judaism was in my life, but after my bat mitzvah, I started to drift away from Judaism. Why? The first reason was because I found it to be pretty structured for me. Also, I found the sermons not to really resonate with me. They weren't real life to me. And there was some Jewish guilt that I had a hard time dealing with. So there was basically no religion in my life until Dan and I went to get married. And when we went to get married, having both sets of parents being Jewish, we felt that we should be married by a rabbi. We were actually afraid that they wouldn't show up at the service if we weren't married by a rabbi. So we went to find the most way out rabbi that we could possibly find. I don't know if any of you remember, but there was a Western bagel commercial in 1988, which was 2 years before we were married. And there was a rabbi with a very long gray beard that was in those Western bagel commercials. Well, we actually found that rabbi, and he was the rabbi that married us. He was very esoteric and very spiritual, and he gave us a beautiful wedding. But after our wedding, once again, no religion, until I was pregnant with our daughter Alexis. When I was pregnant with our daughter Alexis, we realized that per our Jewish tradition, we wanted to have her named in a temple. So off we went in the Conejo Valley looking for a temple. And once again, we found that they didn't really fit for us, but we did find one that we decided to have Alexis named in. So we had Alexis named, and then no religion again. Next stop was when I was pregnant with Brendan. And we wanted Brendan to have the traditional Jewish bris. So once again, we found a rabbi, and Brendan had a bris. At that point, again, no religion, until our children were about 1 and 3, or 1 and 4. And I realized that I wanted to have my children grow up with some sort of spiritual foundation. So I started seeking. We were spending a lot of time in Provo, Utah, and we had lots of friends in Provo, Utah. And guess what? They were all Mormon, LDS. So off I went to Mormon church every week whenever we were in Utah. I actually had the missionaries come to me at our friend's house, and I came that close to becoming Mormon, as Dan shakes his head. Dan was not with me on any of these spiritual paths that I was going on. The next stop I made after that was to the Catholic Church. I went to the Catholic Church every week. I found people to be really nice and wonderful. But once again, guess what? Structure. The message didn't resonate with me. And guess what? The Catholics have the same guilt as the Jews. So once again, I didn't have a fit. Off again I went, this time to newborn Christian churches. 3 different newborn Christian churches. I finally settled at one where I got baptized as Christian. Again, Dan not being included in this spiritual path. That worked okay until one day I was at a Bible study, and this woman looks right at me. And she says, Allison, she says, you know, all of your ancestors are burning in hell. And if you do not convert all of your current relatives to Christianity, they will burn in hell as well. So off I went again. This time I went to Culver City, very ironically, to a client, and that client was talking to me. We were talking at lunch about our woes about religion, and she says, have you ever heard of a church called Unity? And I said, no, I haven't. She said, well, you must hear about a church called Unity. So I went home and Googled Unity. I got online and found out everything I possibly could about Unity. This time I pulled Dan in, and guess what? He, online, fell in love with Unity, but we still had to go to a service. We were living in the Santa Rosa Valley at the time, and we found a church called Unity Center Church, which was in Thousand Oaks, not too far from our house. I pulled Dan, we went to the service, and you know what? Within 10 minutes, we had found home. We knew that we had found our true love in religion. Everybody embraced us. The concepts were something that we could live by, that we felt we could embrace every service, and it was just home. Unity Center Church at that time had about 25 people at a service. We watched Unity Center Church become Unity of the Oaks. Unity Oaks now has 125 people that show up at each service. It's flourished. And with it, Dan and I and our family flourished. I started going to classes. Every Thursday, I would show up in the morning and at night for 2 different classes. I started volunteering, and so did Dan, wherever we possibly could. We started attending socials. We went to every social we could. In fact, something I'd like to see here is the woman had a sleepover party once a year, where we'd go and we'd play games and we'd spend the night together and we'd have camaraderie. What a wonderful experience. Dan became a board member. He was a board member for 6 years as treasurer, and was there another position or just treasurer? Everything. Technology consultant. So we were totally involved in Unity. We went to retreats. We went to Unity Village. All of these were wonderful experiences for us. And our children. Our children have grown up. They started Unity when they were 3 and 6, 13 years ago. And our children have grown up knowing that they are perfect images of God, and that all children are perfect and whole. Unity empowers children to fulfill their divine potential. I know that through Unity, no matter what path my children decide to take, that they will reach their divine potential. Fortunately, through Unity and its love of all different religions and all different races and all different sexual preferences, Unity exudes love, and we're all accepted, including my children. It teaches children to meditate and pray. How many other religious environments teach young children how to meditate and how to think about things so that they become true in their own lives? It also invites children to experience a loving God, a God who they believe is going to take care of them and be there with them, a loving God. And it provides a spiritual foundation in children's lives. Once again, no matter what path my children opt to take, I know they have the strong foundation of being wonderful people as a result of their upbringing in Unity. Unity has 5 spiritual principles, and I'm going to go through each one and how it has impacted my life. First of all, God is good and present everywhere. Most of you don't know that I'm challenged by 2 serious mental illnesses. One is bipolar, which you've probably heard of, and the other is called borderline personality disorder, which is a very serious mental disorder. In fact, 1 out of 5 people with borderline personality disorder kill themselves. Through unity, I have been able to actually embrace my illnesses. I believe that I was put here for a reason. I was put here to share my story and to motivate other people with handicaps to get through those handicaps, those challenges, whatever they are, so that they can live whole lives. I believe I was put here with my challenges for a reason. And that's what I get through the first principle of unity. And in fact, I go out and do motivational speaking on the subject almost every week. The second spiritual principle is that we are all spiritual beings created in God's image. The Spirit of God lives within each person. Therefore, all people are inherently good. Dan and I own our own company. And one year, out of the blue, we had an employee that decided to get angry at us and decided to sue us for a huge sum of money. We were in litigation. We were losing things that we had. Our lives were changing. I was having trouble with forgiveness. So I kept coming to Unity week after week. I'd go to my Bible studies. I'd go hear the message. And guess what? I learned that as long as I held that anger, I wasn't leaving room for love in my life. I learned how to forgive. So Unity has taught me forgiveness. It's taught me how to move on, how to love everyone, even though we all have our shortcomings. So that's the second unity principle. The third unity principle is we create our life experiences through our way of thinking. Unity has taught me what I think about, I bring about. I affirm things in my life, and they come to fruition, if they're meant to be. Through God's love, I learn what really are the things that I want in life, and think about them, and they come about. So that's the third unity principle. The fourth unity principle is there is power in affirmative prayer, which increases our connection of God. And this goes with what I just said as well. I affirm positively. I look at myself as a happy, healthy manifestation of God. I don't say, I'm not going to be sick. That's not a positive affirmation. I'm a happy, healthy manifestation of God, and I get all the love and acceptance that I need through being happy and healthy. Affirmative prayer. The next principle in unity, the last one, is knowledge of these spiritual principles is not enough. We must live them. I find at Unity of the Oaks and here at Unity of the Westside that people in unity practice what we hear in church. We go out there and we live it. And by the way, I didn't mention that when we moved to the Westside, Dan and I found this church, and it totally resonated with us, and we felt home within 10 minutes of being here as well. I wanted to make sure I shared that. And again, people at this church, I find they leave these doors, and they live, they practice what they learn. They embrace it. What a beautiful thing. I remember one of the churches that I went to was huge. There were 1,000 people in it. And I would go to that church and there'd be a message, and there was usually actually a very good message. But you know what happened? Everyone would leave out to this huge parking lot, and they'd be cutting each other off in the parking lot. Doesn't happen here. We go out and live what we learn. So those are the 5 principles of unity. Also, I love that unity sees Jesus as a master teacher, one who has shown us a path. As somebody who was born Jewish, it was difficult for me to embrace for me that Christ was my Savior and he died for my sins. As somebody at Unity, I understand that God embraces all of us, and there's no judgment. There's somebody who's a hero of mine, and his name is Nick Vujicic. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of him, but Nick was born without arms and legs. There was no reason why Nick was born without arms and legs. It just worked out that way. And Nick actually, he wrote a book called Life Without Limits. And I'm going to read you a couple of excerpts from his book, and then we're going to talk about them for a moment. The fact is that as mere mortals, you and I have limited vision. We can't possibly see what lies ahead. That's both the good news and the bad news. My encouragement to you is that what lies ahead may be far better than anything you ever thought possible. But it's up to you to get over it, get up, and show up. Whether your life is good and you want to make it better, or whether it's so bad that you just want to stay in bed, the fact is that what happens from this very moment is up to you and your Maker. True, you can't control everything. Too often bad stuff happens to people, no matter what or how good they are. It may not be fair that you weren't born into a life of ease, but if that is your reality, you have to work with it. Once again, just like with me, Nick believes that he was put here without arms and legs for a reason. And through his spiritual practice, he goes out and teaches handicapped people with all sorts of challenges that he can be and they can be happy and make a difference in the world despite anything that they're challenged with. So this is a lesson that I believe that Unity really teaches us, the reason why we're here. Nick had a story about persistence. And persistence is something that Unity has taught me. When Nick first decided to be a public speaker, he called 96 different places trying to get an opportunity to speak. His 97th call, they said yes. He didn't ask any questions. He later found out, when they went into the specifics, that this place that he was going to be speaking, it was 2 hours away. Well, when you don't have arms and legs, getting 2 hours away isn't a very easy proposition. The next thing was that he was going to be speaking in front of 10 people for 5 minutes. Nick went anyway. He spoke in front of those 10 people for 5 minutes, and guess what? It was a school. He ended up speaking at every single school in that school district, telling his story. He now speaks all over the world. That came from a vision. It came from his spiritual belief that he's here on earth for a reason. We are all here at Unity for a reason. Many different things brought us to this path. But through it, we can achieve not only dreams for ourselves, but to make a difference in the world. To me, that's what Unity has been. It's been an opportunity to explore myself, explore my life, and learn how to make a difference. I thank you all for listening to my story. I hope that it touched you in some way, and that your path to Unity and your path here while you're here is as sweet and wonderful as mine has been.
Yeah.